The messages stacked up without me. That was new. Usually, I was already halfway through an explanation by now, softening words, adding context, making sure nobody felt the wrong thing about me. This time, I left the phone where it was, face down, silent. The quiet didn't feel peaceful, it felt noticed. My mother called first. I watched the screen light up, let it fade, light up again. I didn't move. When it stopped, a message appeared. "Mom, are you okay?" 2 minutes later, "Mom, hello?" I stood in the kitchen and poured a glass of water, drank it slowly. My hands weren't shaking. That surprised me. I'd expected panic, guilt, the familiar pull to fix whatever was forming in the dark. None of it came, just space. By mid-morning, my father texted, "Dad, call your mother, no greeting, no concern, a directive, wrapped in duty." I read it once and set the phone down again. The room felt different, like it wasn't waiting for me to perform. The first accusation came dressed as care. "Aunt Lisa, your mom's worried. It only takes a second to reply." Then my brother tried calling. Once. Then again, slower this time, like he was giving me time to come to my senses. I let it ring out. A message followed. "Brother, what's going on with you?" I didn't answer, and that's when I felt it shift. Not fear, not sadness, alarm. The last time we'd all been together, I'd done what I always did. I'd explained myself. My mother had told a story about me that wasn't quite true, close enough to pass, wrong enough to hurt. I corrected it gently, added nuance, smiled where it made things easier. She'd sighed and said, "You always make things complicated." Everyone had laughed, and for the first time I hadn't rushed to smooth it over. Something in me had closed, quietly, like a door that didn't slam. It just didn't open again. By afternoon, my mother sent a longer message, the kind meant to be remembered. She wrote about how worried she was, how hurtful my silence felt, how families don't do this to each other. She didn't ask what I needed. She asked why I was doing this to them. I read it. Then I turned the phone off. When I turned it back on, there was a screenshot waiting, a family chat I wasn't part of. My name in the middle of it, messages circling the same question from different angles. Is something wrong? This isn't like them. Should we be worried? And then my mother's reply, sitting at the bottom like a conclusion already reached. "If they won't answer, we may need to step in." I stared at the words longer than I needed to, not because they scared me, but because they proved something I hadn't wanted to admit. My silence wasn't hurting them. It was cutting off access, and they could feel it. The next morning, the silence stopped being mine. It spilled. I woke up to missed calls stacked so high my phone lagged when I unlocked it. My mother. My brother. An unknown number I recognized anyway. Someone had started widening the circle. I made coffee, let it go cold. When I finally checked the voicemail, my mother's voice was different, slower, careful, like she was talking to someone unstable. She said my name twice. She said, "We're just worried." She said, "This isn't like you." That part landed heavier than the rest. By noon, the concern had teeth. My aunt left a message reminding me how much my mother had done for me. My brother texted again, this time less patient. "Brother, you're scaring Mom. Whatever this is, stop." As if silence were a tantrum, as if it had an expiration date. I didn't respond, and with that, the story changed. The knock came in the afternoon. 3 sharp taps, a pause, then again, louder. I didn't answer. I stood in the hallway and listened to my own breathing, slow and even, while the person on the other side tried the handle. Locked. A sigh. Footsteps retreating. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. "Mum, we stopped by. You didn't answer. No question mark. Just a fact. Logged." That evening, my father finally called. Not to ask how I was, to tell me this was unnecessary. He said families don't shut each other out. He said my mother hadn't slept. He said people were starting to talk. I let him finish. Then I said nothing. The line went quiet in a way that felt unfamiliar to both of us. He cleared his throat. "Say something," he said, and for a moment I almost did. Years of practice rose up automatically. The instinct to reassure, To explain that I wasn't angry, I wasn't dramatic, I caught it. That old reflex, reaching for me, and I let it pass. After that, the messages turned strategic, offers to drop things off, reminders about birthdays, a sudden concern for my mental health. My cousin texted late that night. "Cousin, just checking you're safe. Safe." As if my quiet were dangerous, as if not explaining myself were a warning sign. I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling, noticing things I'd never had room to notice before. The hum of the fridge, the way my chest rose without effort, how calm felt when it wasn't interrupted. I thought about how often I'd been told I was hard to understand, how often I'd believed it, and how quickly everyone fell apart the moment I stopped translating myself for them. Near midnight, a final message came through from my mother, short this time. "Mum, if you don't respond tomorrow, we'll have to assume something's wrong." I read it once, then I set the phone down. Because for the first time, something was different. They weren't confused. They were losing control of the version of me that explained, absorbed, smoothed, forgave, and without that version, they didn't know how to talk to me at all. I fell asleep before deciding what to do next, not because I was overwhelmed, but because for once, I wasn't. In the morning, I did something I'd never done before. I opened my notes app and wrote a list, not of what I'd done wrong, not of what I needed to fix, just facts. I didn't reply. They escalated. They called it concern. They used other people to reach me. They came to my door. Seeing it like that, plain, unromantic, made my stomach drop, because this wasn't love. This was retrieval. I tried to remember the last time my family accepted a no the first time it was said, not the polite, softened no, the one that came with a smile and 10 extra sentences. The real one, the closed door, no. My mind kept offering scenes like evidence, me, 15, explaining why I couldn't do an extra shift at Mum's shop, her eyes narrowing. The sigh, the guilt placed carefully on the table between us. Me, 22, explaining why I didn't want to move back home. Dad's voice, calm and disappointed. After everything we've done. Me, 27, explaining why I didn't want to talk about my breakup at a family dinner. Aunt Lisa laughing, "Oh, don't be like that, we're family." Every memory had the same shape. I spoke, they corrected, I explained harder, they felt better. And I called that closeness. Around midday, a new message came from my brother, not angry, not pleading, administrative. "Brother, Mum's thinking of calling a welfare check if you don't respond. Just text her, 'I'm fine.'" That's it. It should have been simple. 2 words. A quick relief. But I stared at the screen and felt a cold irritation spread through my chest. Not rage, not heat. Something quieter. Because "I'm fine" wouldn't be for me. It would be a key. They didn't want me okay. They wanted the system to stop flashing red, and the fastest way to do that was for me to step back into my role. Translator, buffer, peacekeeper. I walked to the window and looked down at the street. People moved normally. Bags, cars, a dog pulling its owner toward something interesting. My life looked completely ordinary from up here, but inside, I could feel the old pressure building, the familiar fear. If I don't handle this, it will get worse. That was the trap, wasn't it? They trained me to believe my calm was their responsibility. Then they punished me whenever I stopped providing it. I picked up my phone and drafted a message. "I'm taking space. I'll reach out when I'm ready. Simple. Clean. No apology." My thumb hovered over send. And the smallest part of me, young, obedient, exhausted, whispered, "They're going to make you pay for that. Not because it was cruel, because it was final." The doorbell rang. Once. Then again. I froze. I didn't move toward the door. I didn't check the peephole. I just listened. A muffled voice, my mother's voice, too bright. "Sweetheart? It's me." Another voice joined, my aunt. "We just want to talk, love." I felt my pulse in my throat. Not panic, recognition. This was the moment they always won. The moment I opened the door and gave them something, an explanation, a reason, a piece of me. so they could go back to feeling like good people. The bell rang again, and my phone buzzed at the same time. "Mum, please, don't do this." I stared at the locked door, then at the message, and I understood with a clarity that made my hands go cold. They weren't asking to come in, they were reminding me they could. I didn't open the door. The bell rang one last time, then stopped. I heard shuffling, small, impatient steps, then the scrape of someone leaning in close. My mother again, quieter now. "Just answer me. Not are you okay, not what do you need. Just answer." I stayed still until the hallway went silent. Then I walked to the peephole. No one. But something had been left on the mat. A plastic bag, a container of food, like a peace offering, like proof. My phone lit up. "Aunt Lisa, we left you dinner. Because we care? Please stop being stubborn." Stubborn, that word. It always meant come back into the shape we can manage. An hour later, a knock that didn't sound like family, 2 firm taps, a pause, then another. I didn't have to look to know what it was. The threat my brother had mentioned turned into action. I opened the door a crack, chain on. A uniformed officer stood there, polite, neutral, a clipboard energy, someone assigned to make the situation safe. "Hi," he said. "We received a call requesting a welfare check." Behind him, down the hall, I saw them. My mother and my aunt at the corner, pretending they weren't watching. My mother's face arranged into concern, eyes shiny like she'd practiced in the car mirror. I felt something settle in me, not anger, a kind of clean disappointment, because they'd chosen the biggest lever they had, not to help me, just to force contact. "I'm fine," I told the officer. He asked my name, asked if I lived alone, asked if I'd harmed myself. I answered calmly, directly, no extra words. He glanced past me into my apartment. It was normal, quiet, lived in, no crisis to perform. He nodded. "All right, I just need to confirm you're okay." "I am." And then, because he was human, he softened a little. "Maybe give them a call. They seem worried." I looked at my mother down the hall. She gave a tiny nod, like I'd finally come to my senses. I didn't nod back. When the officer left, my mother rushed forward like the air itself had been holding her back. "Oh, thank God," she said, reaching for me. I stepped away. It was small, barely visible, but it stopped her. Her hands dropped. Her smile faltered. "What is this?" she demanded, the sweetness evaporating. I kept my voice even. "You called the police to my door." "We were worried." "You were panicking," I said. "There's a difference." My aunt jumped in immediately. "Don't start. We're here because we love you." I stared at them, and something in me refused to do its old job. No soothing, no translation, no apology. "I'm taking space," I said. "I'll reach out when I'm ready." My mother's face tightened as if I'd slapped her. "You can't do that," she said. "Not please don't, not I'll miss you. You can't." And that was the whole story in one sentence. My father called 10 minutes later, voice low and furious. "What the hell are you doing to your mother?" I listened, let him run out of momentum. Then I said, "I didn't do anything to her. I stopped managing her feelings." Silence on the line. I could almost hear him searching for the right guilt, the right hook, the phrase that usually brought me back. "You're being cruel," he finally said, because it was the closest thing he had to power. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just said, "I'll talk to you when you can speak to me without trying to control me." And I hung up. That night, the family chat lit up like a fire. Screenshots, opinions, diagnoses. My cousin, "This is scary." My aunt, "Ungrateful." My brother, "Just apologize so we can move on, as if what they wanted was peace, not access. I muted the thread. Then I did something that felt like stepping into sunlight. I blocked my mother. Just for now, just long enough to prove to myself that I could. My finger hovered on my father's name. I blocked him too. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was mine. I sat on my couch in a quiet apartment and waited for the guilt to flood in. It didn't. What came instead was a strange, unfamiliar relief. and a grief that surprised me with its softness, because part of me still wanted them to knock like normal people. Part of me still wanted them to ask a real question, but they didn't know how. Not with me like this. Not without the old version of me holding the whole family together with explanations. I looked at my phone. Dark, finally, and realized the panic had stopped. Not theirs, mine.